Some people don't realise this, but the Xbox Series X can actually play original Xbox games in 2026, even 25 years after they were first released. Now, there are more than 900 original Xbox games, and unlike the Xbox 360, where around half of the entire library is backwards compatible and works on the newer systems, there are only 63 original Xbox games that work on the Xbox Series X today. And many of these games actually run better than they ever have before. And that's because the Xbox Series X actually enhances these games, meaning higher frame rates, resolution boosts, and just a better overall experience. From Star Wars and Grand Theft Auto to lesser known titles that you might not expect. Let's take a look at the original Xbox games that still work on the Xbox Series X in 2026. And before we start, let me know down in the comments what your favourite original Xbox game of all time is. Whether it's backwards compatible or not, I don't really care. Just let me know what your favourite game is down in the comments below. So the original Xbox, this big thing over here, was Microsoft's first ever games console. It released in 2021, so 25 years ago now. And it gave birth to some of Xbox's biggest and best franchises ever. Games like Fable, Forza, and obviously Halo, which has been Microsoft's flagship game and franchise throughout the entire Xbox life. But despite the age of these games, some of them actually work on Xbox's modern day powerhouse, the Xbox Series X. So yeah, I believe there were 989 games released for the original Xbox in total, and just 63 of them are backwards compatible with the newer consoles today. And what this means is you can actually put the original disc into your Xbox Series X and the system will play it. And even better is that most of these games are really cheap today in 2026, especially over here in the UK where we have access to things like CEX. You can find a lot of these games at charity shops, or of course on places like eBay and Vinted alike. So firstly, how does backwards compatibility work? So I've spoken about this in some of the other videos I've done, which you can go and check out just above, and they were more based on the Xbox 360 backwards compatible library. But essentially, the Xbox Series X doesn't have an original Xbox inside of it. Microsoft basically has to manually test and kind of almost remaster every game that they want to make backwards compatible, and they did most of this back in the late 2010s. When you put an older disc into the Series X, it doesn't actually play from the disc itself. What happens is that basically acts as a key, and then the Series X downloads the actual game from the Xbox servers. The version of the game that it downloads is an enhanced version that is optimized to work on the Series X, on new TVs, all that kind of stuff. Basically an emulated package, and that means that the disc essentially is just your license to play the game. And when you do launch these games, one of my favourite things has got to be the load up screen. So when you pop an older game in and you launch it to go play it, you get this fully 4K, gorgeous looking, like artwork from the game you're about to play. It's only something really small and minor, but for me, yeah, it proper touches nostalgia. It probably hits that nostalgia spot. And yeah, I absolutely love that. I'll put a couple of examples on screen now. Interestingly, any games that have been removed from the store but are still backwards compatible, which I will talk about a couple in this list, they still will work, even though they've been removed from the Microsoft Store, so you can't buy them anymore. And before we look at some of the games, it's also worth noting that this is not just the Series X. This also works on the Xbox One and the Xbox One X as well. And touching back upon that enhancement, on an Xbox One, original Xbox games run at 4 times the resolution. And on the Xbox One X and the Xbox Series X, they run at 16 times their original resolution, which is pretty mind-blowing and actually makes the games look almost new in some cases. So let's take a look at some of the games that still work today. And first up is Star Wars. Now, this generation had hands down some of the best Star Wars games ever made. Games like Battlefront and Battlefront 2, The Clone Wars, Revenge of the Sith, Jedi Outcast, Knights of the Old Republic, and Knights of the Old Republic 2. And guess what? These are all backwards compatible today in 2026. That means you can pick these up, and they are relatively cheap today. Now, most of these are about £6 to £8 here in the UK at the moment at CEX. And yeah, you can pick these up, put them into your Series X and play them right now. And some of them do get really good enhancements. For example, apparently Knights of the Old Republic runs at 60 frames per second. Now for a game that is over 20 years old, this should not look great, but let me tell you now, when you put these games into your Series X, they run surprisingly well, and they look like they're almost from the last generation in gaming. not from the early noughties. So yeah, as you can see with this one, we are playing in like full screen, full resolution. We're in Star Wars Battlefront, which is got to be one of the greatest Star Wars games ever created, alongside Battlefront 2. And we are going to do Clone Wars era. We're going to do Tatooine, obviously. And we are going to be the Republic. Now, as you can see, I mean, maybe you can't tell. Hopefully you can tell. This does not look like a game from 25 years ago. Now, yeah, it might play like a game from 25 years ago, but it certainly doesn't look like one. And another game that often gets overlooked, in my opinion, is one of, I think, the best shooters from this era, and that is TimeSplitters 2. So there were 3 games that were released on the OG Xbox in the TimeSplitters series. They were TimeSplitters, the first one, TimeSplitters 2, and TimeSplitters 3 Future Perfect. Now, both TimeSplitters 2 and TimeSplitters 3 Future Perfect both are backwards compatible. Now, TimeSplitters 2, which is my favourite out of the set, was added to the backwards compatibility list in 2021, so quite late on into the project. And I remember this for its co-op, so up to 4 people co-op. And yeah, just a really kind of fun arcadey shooter. I'll pop it in and have a play in a second. I do remember that inverted controls on this were a nightmare for me as a child. And given that most shooters nowadays are not inverted, it's probably going to be quite hard to jump back into and play. I will have a go at it in just a second. And it is worth noting that this one at the moment, over here in the UK, is just £2 at the shop. I think for £2 for a game that's enhanced on your Series X, look, you cannot go wrong with that. I think this is an absolutely brilliant game. It's certainly not a hidden gem because it is fairly well known amongst gamers, but at the same time, there's also a lot of people I speak to that have never played these games or never really heard of them. And yeah, if you do have more than one Series X controller, I believe you can still play this split screen today on the backwards compatible version. I think for me, if I had to describe this game, I would maybe say it, obviously nowhere near as impactful in terms of what it had on the wider gaming world, but it does remind me of kind of like GoldenEye. You know, proper like, I was a bit too young to remember GoldenEye in its like glory days as the first proper like multiplayer shooter. But I imagine it was like this. Just good couch co-op fun. Could play this game for hours, absolutely love it. And then there were some interesting games that were released fairly towards the end of the Xbox's life cycle. And for that reason, they were released on both the original Xbox and the Xbox 360. And they are games that include Grand Theft Auto San Andreas and also Battlefield 2. Now, both of these 2 games are backwards compatible. However, really, really interestingly, when you put this game into your Xbox Series X or Battlefield 2, it actually downloads the Xbox 360 version. And that's really important to note because the original Xbox version of San Andreas is about £8 to £10. Whereas the Xbox 360 version is actually £25. Now, obviously, if you're playing on a 360, the 360 version is going to be the better way to play. But if you're playing on a newer system like an Xbox One or a Series X, you might as well just pick up the original Xbox version and you're getting exactly the same game as you would when you put in the disc for the 360 version. And I do think this is a really cool and interesting concept because I wonder, like, going forward, you know, there's a lot of talk at the moment about Xbox revisiting the backwards compatibility list and that program of work and maybe adding more games to it. And I wonder, especially when we get towards the next generation of Xbox, assuming it's got a disk drive and, you know, Microsoft have confirmed that it will play backwards compatible games, I wonder if things like Skyrim, for example, or GTA 5 that had releases across the Xbox 360, releases on the Xbox One and the Series X, I wonder if they're going to do something similar with those kind of games where you can put in any iteration or any version of a disc of Skyrim, for example, and the new system will download the most enhanced and new version. I'm not sure, but yeah, pretty interesting and certainly something to think about moving forward. So hopefully you can see the screen, and as you'll see, we have just put in the original Xbox disc for San Andreas, but the icon is actually the Xbox 360 version, like I mentioned. So when we boot it up, we get the Xbox 360 intro rather than the OG Xbox, even though it's an OG Xbox disc. How iconic are these loading screens. Literally any old GTA game, whether it's Vice City or whether it's San Andreas or even like GTA 4, these loading screens are just super iconic. I do remember it taking my original Xbox or my PS2 like a good 5-10 minutes though to load through these screens, whereas the Series X has done it in about 30 seconds. And yeah, once again, this game is running in full screen, 16:9 full screen. And again, while some of the textures and things might look dated, and obviously there's like the roads are fairly empty and stuff, in terms of how it looks, I would say this looks like, to the eye, in terms of like the map and things, and the text in the top left, and in the top, the info in the top right, so the HUD kind of stuff, I would say this looks better than GTA 4. If I put GTA 4 into my 360, I think that does not look as good as this, despite this game being, what, a good probably like 10 years older? Being, what, a good 5 years older than it, and developed, obviously, on an older console. We then got one of my favourite games of all time. Now, I thought I had the disc for this, but it turns out I don't. However, it is on Game Pass, and that is Elder Scrolls Morrowind. Now, for anyone who's played Oblivion and played Skyrim, obviously they are part of the same set of games. And for me, Morrowind was the first one that I visited. And it is just absolute classic Bethesda RPG. Very similar game to things like Oblivion again and Skyrim, like I keep saying. And in my opinion, just as good as them. I have such fond memories of playing Morrowind when I was younger. Now, like I said, this is on Game Pass, but the disc does also work as a backwards compatible game. And the really interesting thing about this one is that if you have the Game of the Year edition on disc, which includes both of the 2 expansion packs, I've forgotten the name of them, but they were 2 expansion packs, both those are also backwards compatible. So when you put the disc in, it will download the full package of the base Morrowind game, as well as the 2 expansion packs. And all 3 kind of games, or all 3 parts of the game, are enhanced and work on your Series X better than they ever did on an original Xbox. And it is worth noting that the Game of the Year edition is quite a little bit more money. I think, again, the standard edition is £10, and I think the Game of the Year edition does fetch around £25. So you are going to pay a premium for that version. And yes, similarly to what I said with GTA, I would say that this probably, in terms of now I'm playing it in the game, because of the enhancement and how crisp it looks, I would say this looks better than Oblivion. Yeah, the textures, you know, certainly when you're looking at the assets in the game, they don't look as polished. But in terms of how sharp this looks better than Oblivion. This could pass as a game that came out like last generation. And then quite a controversial game. So a game made by Rockstar, who obviously made Red Dead Redemption and GTA. And that is Manhunt. Now this game is really kind of well known because of how brutal, gruesome it is. It's actually banned in some countries around the world, including places like Australia. So quite surprising that Xbox decided to add this to the backwards compatibility list. But it does work. You can put it in your Xbox Series X. It will play absolutely fine. It is one of the slightly more expensive games over here in the UK. Currently about £20 to pick this one up. And I won't show too much footage of this one just because I'll have to declare like violence to YouTube when I upload the video, etc. But yeah, a really interesting title. One that I was reading the list yesterday when I was planning the video. Really surprised that this is actually on the list. I've had the game in my collection for a few months now and I've not had a chance to put it in and play it as of yet. But it's certainly one that I am probably going to visit on the Series X in the coming weeks. And then similarly to Star Wars, another kind of set of games that pretty much the entire collection are all backwards compatible is the Tom Clancy's. So Tom Clancy, the Splinter Cell games, in my opinion, being the most notable from this generation of gaming. Interestingly, and I'm not sure why, some of the Tom Clancy games have actually been removed from the online store now, but they do still all work if you've got the disc. So you still can play them if you've got the disc, but you can't download them from the store anymore. And these ones are all super, super cheap. We're talking like £1 to £2 per game at the moment in CEX. And I think that's just because not many people jump back into these older games. Now, I do have such fond memories and a lot of nostalgia for the Splinter Cell games. But I feel like the Tom Clancy games come out every single year. Whether it was the Xbox 360, the Xbox One, or even the Series X. Things like Division, Division 2, whatever we're up to now, Siege, etc. And then there's that many Tom Clancy games that if you want to play one, you're probably going to play a newer one, rather than jumping back into one that's 25 years old. So yeah, I presume that's why they are cheaper, but yeah, they do all, pretty much every one of them works on the newer consoles today, and they do look fantastic thanks to the enhancements that the newer system gives them. Most people think that Red Dead Redemption was the first game in that series, but they would be wrong, because before Red Dead Redemption and Red Dead Redemption 2, there was actually Red Dead Revolver. This was the first. Yeah, people always forget about this one. Not quite like the expansive open world Western games that the two following games were, and also not as good in any sense. Like, you know, Red Dead Redemption and Red Dead Redemption 2 kind of both set the bar for video games when they were both respectively released. I think they both won numerous Game of the Year awards. So Red Dead Revolver never did that. However, it still is a good game. And if you haven't played it, I would recommend it. And yeah, once again, that is also backwards compatible on the Xbox Series X. And given Red Dead Redemption on the 360 is also backwards compatible with the Series X, you can put all 3 Red Dead games in to your Series X and play them all on one system. So there are most of the games in my collection that are backwards compatible, but there are quite a few more. So I will just talk through some of them very quickly now. So Black, which I've got on PS2, apparently a really good shooter game. Now, I've never actually played it despite having it on PS2, but it's backwards compatible on the Xbox, and yeah, it's meant to be a really good game, that one, so I am interested in how it plays, and I might pick it up and jump back into it. Chicken Little, which is one of the games that gets an FPS boost, surprisingly, and it's also actually quite rare to see a licensed Disney game added to the backwards compatibility list. Usually licensing is one of the biggest issues when Xbox are trying to add games or make them backwards compatible, because they've got to revisit them licenses. But yeah, Chicken Little is backwards compatible. And then we've got Indiana Jones, and again, similarly to Chicken Little, given that it's a licensed game, it's also rare that this one works, but it does. It might be because I don't think that one is based on a film as such. I think it is like a standalone game that obviously carries in Indiana Jones license. And actually thinking about it now, Xbox obviously released an Indiana Jones game last year, so they must own some kind of rights or licensing rights for the name Indiana Jones and the brand. So maybe that's why they can have this one on the backwards compatibility list. And then Prince of Persia Sands of Time, which I don't know if it's just nostalgia, but I think Sands of Time is my favourite Prince of Persia game ever. I just remember playing that one growing up. I think I actually played it on the PS2 when I was young, when it was out. But yeah, absolutely loved that game. So yeah, there you have it. A great selection of original Xbox games that still work on the Xbox Series X today in 2026. Now obviously I do wish there was a lot more. I think 63 games probably is not as many as it should be. It certainly should be more than that, especially when there are over 600 360 titles that work on the Series X. But I think the craziest part and the most shocking part to me, and probably the most frustrating part as well, is that a lot of the staples don't work. So the Forza games, for example, and the Halo games, and the Fable games, none of them work. None of them are backwards compatible. Now, Microsoft obviously has reasons for this. Forza is a lot to do with car licensing, which we know is notoriously hard to get. The Halo games are obviously all included on the Master Chief Collection, which Xbox say is the best way to play them. But because I own the discs, it would be nice to be able to put a few copies of like the first or second Halo into an OG Xbox, into a 360, and into a Series X, and kind of like play System Link, etc. Especially given these games are like £1 or £2 at CEX at the moment. It'd be really nice if you could, buy these games for a couple of quid and play them on your Series X, rather than having to go out and buy the Master Chief Collection. And let's also not forget the Master Chief Collection is like a 140 gigabyte download or something, which a lot of people don't have room for, especially if you own like a Series S. So it'd be nice to be able to have, the disc work. And Fable, I'm honestly not sure why the Fable games don't work. There's no licensing issues really, and as far as I'm aware, there's not really been remasters of the Fable games in recent years. So yeah, it'd be nice to have them work on the newer systems as well. Although we obviously are getting a new Fable game later this year. But yeah, for me, it just feels like, first party Xbox games surely should work. They're the ones that they maybe should add to the backwards compatible before they look at third party games. But hey, that's just the way it is. Once again, yeah, please do let me know down in the comments. So yeah, please let me know in the comments your favourite Xbox game, your favourite backwards compatible Xbox game, the games that you wish were backwards compatible and are not. Let me know down in the comments. I will respond to each and every comment made on the video. As always, thank you for watching and keep gaming.